Hello and welcome to the Securus Firestarter for September 15th, 2014. I'm Rich Mogul, and joining me today, as usual, are Mike Rothman
Hello.
and Adrian Lane.
Hello from the desert.
The very wet desert. It's been like 30 degrees humidity here, which is it's no fun going outside when it's 30 degrees and 97 degrees.
Welcome to my world.
I don't want to live in your world. That's why we live here. No,
That's
we
why you
want to live in
chose
your
the desert. That's right. That's right.
All right, so what'd you guys do last week? Quiet week, huh?
I honestly I can't even remember last week. It's. I mean, I'm just in a fog of activity and running around. So I think I had fun. It was the twins' birthday over the weekend, so I got to ride herd over a whole mess of 11-year-olds, which, by the way, I don't recommend for anybody. So if there's some way to get out of that activity, try to do that. But short of that, you make the best of it. So we did have some fun.
No, not fun. Never-ending string of phone calls last week, especially during the Apple event too. It would fail, and somebody'd call, and then it'd start streaming again, and I'd be trying to watch that, and somebody else would call, and the video would fail again. So I think I spent the entire day trying to just catch up on returning voicemail messages and finally watch the Apple event.
And yeah, I went watch shopping in Cupertino, apparently. So I didn't have any problems with the failing video of the Apple event. So yeah, it's an interesting week. So I flew out there on Monday, and trust me, folks, this will be relevant to security stuff here in a moment. And went. I got to go to the Apple event. I was invited to that. I tend to go to a bunch of these things lately, and it was clearly different.
So what was
When we
that?
walked in.
Kissing ass has its privileges. Is that what we could say?
Yeah, whatever. Apparently, all you need to do is write about Apple security and be technically accurate and ignore the hyperbole, and they like you. It's just
Ah.
nuts. So you stop talking about how much they're failing and how you can blame it all on the and Apple is doomed after Steve Jobs' death, which is what everybody else writes about. And I just write about how the stuff works, and they seem to like that. So yeah, no, I was out there and look. Not going to talk about the Apple Watch at all. I mean, it was very cool. I actually got to have one on my wrist for a little bit doing the demo thing, and I think definitely they've got it's version one of what is, and it's going to be pretty awesome to see where that heads. But version one I will likely buy, and there's a bunch of interesting security stuff with that and continuity and how all the pieces link together that people are less interested in. But they announced Apple Pay, and I'll be honest, that one took me by surprise. So, Adrian, you're our payments expert here. I mean,
Well, it took you by surprise because you weren't expecting it, or it was different than you had thought.
there were rumors they were going to do something. The scale of what they pulled off was really surprising, and the implementation itself had a lot of really unexpected touches in there. And so I think that was probably the biggest of everything Apple announced. The watch is their future on the platform side, but I think Apple Pay is better represents the future of where the company is headed in terms of leveraging their muscle as of today, the most valuable company in the U.S. Financially, with their ability to build ecosystems. And so it was absolutely fascinating from that standpoint. So there's a lot of technical stuff in there and a lot of huge misunderstandings about how that works. And I mean, it's a pretty bomb-proof system, assuming it works the way that they and the banks and everybody else says it works. And you combine that with the business relationships they've managed to build. And I think, honestly, so I submitted an article. I wrote two articles on this, one for Tidbits the day of, and the other for Macworld a few days later. And on the Macworld article, my original title was, how Apple Pay works and why it's such a big deal, or something like that. And my editor changed the title to, why Apple Pay may be the first mobile payment system you use. And I think that fully represents, what the significance of that particular announcement. And by the way, caveat. I'm talking predominantly about the U.S. This is very different in other markets where they have had mobile payments that everybody does use already. It's just here we've never been able to pull it off.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of surprises, and if you follow the insight, you know that probably every week I've got at least one insight talking about mobile payments. And I was surprised in two different ways. One, I really didn't think that they were going to be interested in doing a hardware secure element within the phone. I figured that they had enough control of the architecture that a hardware equivalent, basically a virtual secure element would have worked. And so I was surprised to see about a week before the Apple event that there were rumors that they were actually going to include a secure element. And for those who don't know it, the secure element basically is where you're going to store the keys. It's a physically secure piece of hardware that's bundled tightly with the NFC controllers, which is the piece that actually talks to the cash register. And so that's actually a pretty big deal right there, because right off the bat, you've got enough baseline security that you could meet FIPS and common criteria certifications, and basically have a secure payment piece. The other one that really surprised me is that Apple didn't actually request any of the information. Is in fact not keeping any of the information. They're not storing the credit cards. They say they're not keeping any of the transactional information. They're purely pulling out the keys from the secure element, making the back-end API calls to get the proper tokens for the transaction, and just basically being the gateway. They're not really doing much more than conducting commerce through the phone. So we've had obviously wallets and secure payments efforts within the U.S. for a long time. I wrote my first secure wallet back 1997 timeframe for both browser and Java applications. No traction whatsoever in the banking community. PayPal's been trying this for a long time. Google's had various wallet initiatives for 4 or so years. So yes, it's used outside of the United States, but traction for digital wallets is very limited. Good idea, payment lubricant in many ways, because it makes it very, very easy to buy things from your mobile device. Everything from a cash register to sometimes online payments as well, because it's almost set up like two-factor authentication. But it'll be interesting to see if Apple can really pull this off, and I think they can, because the user experience looks like it's going to be so clean and so easy to use.
So what's going to be required on the merchant side?
Well, they have to have an EMV point of sale terminal, and with the NFC support, and a lot of them are having to move that direction anyway, because, and Adrian, tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is a lot of the EMV ones for the chip and pin, which is now being pushed out much more heavily by the card brands here in the U.S., also include the NFC hardware in them.
Yes.
As well as there's a bunch of them deployed already. And so, McDonald's has this, and Walgreens has this, and a lot of the gas stations and stuff have it. So you need that basic hardware, and then they obviously need to work with a processor that's going to go ahead and buy into the Apple Pay system, which is why so when they made the announcement, you'll notice they lined up the banks. So those are the issuing banks that are involved, and then they mentioned the retailers who are involved, and that side goes through the acquiring banks and the payment processors. And so they need to line up more and more of those. And so that's it. So we're already getting more of this hardware and stuff out there. What fascinates me is I didn't know a lot of the politics around this. I knew a little bit of it, and if you think one of the reasons that things have struggled here is the phone companies have been the ones to basically kind of lock it down. Phone companies wanted to own the transactions. They wanted to get their piece of the transactions, and they wanted to do it. And the way they were doing that is you have to remember, other than the iPhone, for the most part, all the hardware that you go out and buy has been branded Verizon, branded AT&T, branded whoever, which means that they can control actually the hardware and the software and what gets turned on and what gets turned off. So Google wanted to do this a while ago, and to Google's credit, they wanted the secure element on that hardware. They were only able to do that on their own hardware, where they controlled the operating system, and when they controlled the hardware, which was, what was it, the Moto X, I think, was the only phone?
Yeah.
And then eventually a couple of the higher-end Samsungs were able to do this, but even then the carriers didn't fully support it on the software side. Apple, on the other hand, they have just always sold the iPhone the way they want the iPhone, with no carrier branding, no carrier apps, or anything else. So you've got the carriers who, one of the very first lessons I learned at Gartner was a guy named Nick, I'm forgetting his last name, over at Gartner. He was a mobile analyst and telecom, and this is like early 2000. And he said, never underestimate the greed and stupidity of a telecom provider. And they wanted to control this. They didn't want to play nice with the banks. They're playing hardball. You're not going to get to our customers unless you play nice with us. Well, Apple just totally end ran that. I mean, the carriers just have no say in this. They just got locked down, and so SoftCard It used to be ISIS, but they changed that for some weird political reason. Um, the soft card stuff, which is what they were working on and was implemented on phones, the banks never liked that. The payment processors never liked that. The carriers were trying their best to lock out everybody else, so they were going to control the system. And then Apple comes in and sliced through that side of it on the carriers because they put it in and they lined up the banks and they lined up the merchants and the payment processors. So that's one reason number one why this has a lot of bigger potential. It also end runs Google. Google's been doing a lot of interesting stuff with Google Wallet, but they want to, again, track and manage those transactions. They didn't play as nice with the banks, and now Google's getting kind of not locked out, but more challenged than Apple is going to be because Apple's the first to do this in a way that makes the banks happy. And Apple really is just a conduit from the banks to the device for the most part. And they built the guts to connect those pieces together. It uses the secure element that the banks want, which is why Google's soft wallet is limited and Google had to do all sorts of fraud. They had to accept fraud liability on behalf of their customers for the soft wallet transactions, which is kind of a little bit unheard of. And then they were serving as an intermediary so they could track all the transactions. Apple doesn't track anything. They're the pipe. They take their per transaction fees. And on the hardware side, the banks
so there will be per transaction fees. That wasn't clear to me.
Oh yeah, and it's real small, but enough that it's going to add up really quickly to very large numbers for Apple.
Right, and again, I don't know much about any of the payment stuff, and I leave that to you and Adrian, Rich, on that front. But when you look at it from a business model standpoint, obviously Google, if they're not getting that data to be able to mine that, that kind of dramatically impacts their ability to do their business, which is based upon all of that evil stuff that you talk about all the time. Whereas Apple is really all about the hardware, right? So remember, a large percentage of their top line and the significant bottom line leverage that they have is driven by hardware sales, right, of the whole system. So this is really kind of potentially the killer app that drives a lot of iPhone 6 types of upgrades, and that kind of really fills their coffers. When you take somebody who has a pretty good phone, right, like me, right, I got my nice little 5S and it works pretty okay, and we'll all be upgrading probably towards the end of the week towards iPhone 6. Well, one, because we can, right, but two, again, the pay thing for guys that understand how this works is actually pretty compelling. So you're taking a bunch of folks that probably don't need new phones and giving them a real catalyst and a reason to buy them.
Yeah, I mean, the camera's not that much better that I felt like I needed to have the camera on the 6. The screen, I'm happy with my 5S screen. I'm not obsessed with the larger phones. As a matter of fact, I prefer this size. Like I go running, I can stick this in a little belt pack or something when I'm out traveling and everything else.
Small pockets.
Yeah, and the 6 blows that out. I mean, I've held it. I got to hold all this stuff. I got to wear the Apple Watch. The 6 will fit in my pocket. The 6 Plus is a beast. I want nothing to do with it. But the payment part, that's what made me realize I need to order this the day it comes out, as opposed to I'll see. And no, I think that's going to be huge. And the experience of it, because Touch ID is what enables this. So if you're using Google's wallet, if you're using anybody else's wallet, you have to pull it out, and you've got to type in your passcode and deal with any of that. This, you pull your phone out, you go, bink, and you just hold it, you're done. And better yet, the Apple Watch has its own secure element. And so that means that you can go out, and I confirmed this with Apple. I asked one of my contacts over there, and basically, nothing's finalized, but it has a secure element. You can put that watch on, you can go out for a run. I don't know why you do that. It doesn't have GPS, so I need my GPS tracking, but and you want to buy a bottle of water, you just go into the the grocery store or the gas station, you grab your water and you hold your watch up. And what's interesting about the watch is the biometrics are different on that. It doesn't have Touch ID. What happens is the watch knows when it's on your wrist because it has the pulse sensors. If you take the watch off your wrist, it locks it and you have to re-unlock it with a PIN code. So it's not the Touch ID biometrics, but there's still a locking mechanism on the watch. I'll be interested to see if there's different transaction fees associated with it. But from a security standpoint, the other piece of this also is Apple is using basically, probably one of the better tokenization options that I've seen. Adrian and I have been writing about this for years. When did we write that database paper where we talked about tokenization? I mean, that was 3-4 years ago.
2008.
Yeah. And so with the tokenization, they're doing an interesting tokenization. They're not tokenizing the credit card number on like a per merchant or per bank basis. It's per device. So if you lose your device, all you have to do is wipe that token off your device, and then later you re-register your credit card on that device. It doesn't wipe it out on the rest of your devices, which is if they did tokenize your actual card number with your bank, you would have to kind of reissue it across all your devices. It's a per device token as well, which is pretty awesome. And I think that's been done before by others. But that combination of the Touch ID, the secure enclave, the secure element, the back-end payment system pieces, and the privacy, and we spent a moment talking about privacy because that is, I think, where Apple is really going after Google's guts very clearly, to the point of where Apple has changed aspects of what they do to increase privacy, because they see that as a massive weakness on Google's side.
And by the way, that's a weakness you can't fix because it's a business model issue.
Yeah, and I wrote an article about that. That, let's just say, people. I had somebody within some organization say, like, they were just so pleased that that got written because that's what they've been working on for years, and then nobody had kind of pieced it together, and they're not allowed to talk about it, kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. So, weirdly, it was not somebody I actually normally know. It was somebody that reached out of nowhere. So, it's kind of it's interesting because Google obviously. Now Apple just had a big failure because, to some degree. So there's the iCloud hacking stuff, which is straight up social engineering. And so a lot of people are conflating that. Why can I trust them with payments? Hopefully, after listening to this, you understand the ties, the payment system, how that is architected. Very different than your user account stuff that you've got with your iCloud. And the other is there's been a lot of debate about iCloud security and privacy overall. And I think a lot of that's a misunderstanding of, Apple's there's a bunch of pieces of iCloud. It's not like Dropbox or Box, where it's one kind of consistent platform. It's closer to Amazon, where there's like a dozen different things going on. And there was one route to get in, which is a huge hole, which is now being closed, or closed not necessarily in an ideal way, but in a way that should work, at least temporarily, which was those iCloud backups and the multi-factor authentication. And there were people going, oh, that's not secure. No, actually, it is. There's things like it won't back up your keychain, and there's all these little kind of pieces, nuances there that were lost. The problem is how many people understand that level of nuance, and everybody just saw celebrity nudes, and that kind of, you can't beat celebrity nudes. That's all I'm saying.
I got nothing to that.
I got nothing.
All right, so I'll close out the Firestarter a little bit. It's fascinating because Apple some of the stuff that they've got for iCloud, it's pretty wild. So the way FaceTime and messages are encrypted, it's not fully NSA proof, but it's the kind of thing where the system would have to be re-architected for Apple or anyone else to read those messages. Keychain, there's a way of deploying keychain sync that can be NSA proof. I mean, Apple physically destroys the HSM admin login cards, the smart cards to open up the admin portal on the HSMs. So once they set up an HSM, they can never go in and do anything else with that. They have to wipe that thing from scratch and send it back to the manufacturer to make changes, so that somebody couldn't come in later if there was a compromised employee, go in and make admin changes to get access to keys. They provision it, and before any user's keys are on that, they destroy the admin cards. That's part of their process. They have two-factor on your core Apple ID account that you can enable, and they have notifications. You enter, you start up new devices, and it notifies all of your other devices that a new one has been registered, which is super annoying if you deploy betas all the time like I do. But they screwed up because they didn't have two-factor on registering a new device. They didn't have two-factor on recovering a backup, and they didn't have notifications on photos or backups. And the larger you think about the bulk of their user population, they probably almost didn't care about those pieces. They just want to have that backup. But for people who are being targeted, in particular for photos like that, huge issue. So, and there may have been some problems. I don't think they have good risk-based auth from what we've seen, although famous people are really hard because they might be in two different cities, a few hours apart kind of a situation, or two different countries. So that piece is tough. I think they definitely need to step up their game there around those components, because this is becoming the center of the digital life. But what I would like to see is Apple's got all this great design stuff and Touch ID and all these other pieces. What can they do different with iCloud? And I don't know if there's an easy answer there, because nobody has figured out anything other than very rough multi-factor authentication for truly securing these super sensitive accounts. Even the banks still struggle with account takeovers. And if you add the usability issues of now all the different features and functions and things that are in something like iCloud, um, that's a tough problem to solve. I don't think I have great answers. I haven't encountered anybody who I think has any answer that really sings out as the right way to go. And I'm kind of hoping Apple would put some effort into that piece of the problem.
I
All
got
right,
nothing.
I blew you guys out with my Apple stuff.
I was
No,
just happy that you could
I'm,
take a photo of it of your credit card and it would go right into the wallet. That was cool.
yeah,
My
yeah.
parents could have used that, and they're technophobes.
Good demo. And listen, I could talk about celebrity nudies all day, right? But I don't know that there's an answer to it. But besides, don't take pictures of yourself without clothes on. I mean, that is certainly an answer.
That is not culturally acceptable, Mike. We live in a new age. I did like on Twitter, one of the hacker buddies we have in Europe is like, nude pictures, what the hell? What's the big deal? And everyone's like,
Right.
no, it matters here in the U.S.
Yeah,
We
right.
actually care about that.
Right.
Europe, we know you've got politicians
Oh,
banging each other out in
I don't
Parliament
care.
on
I mean,
stage.
that's it doesn't bother me. I got no issue with it.
By the way, not just the picture of the credit card. If you have an existing iTunes account, when you go to set up Apple Pay, it'll just say, "Do you want to use this?" You click yes. You click Touch ID as you would for any other purchase, and instantly that card is linked in, and the device account number is pushed down onto your device. So you don't even have to take the picture of the credit card if Apple has one of your credit cards that you want to use. Yeah. And finally, I don't know. I think they did this whole thing just so people use Passbook for something other than a boarding pass.
Which I don't, because I like the Delta app, but that's just me.
Oh, you're a lucky man. US Air's app is horrible. So, all right. Well, I probably blabbered too long about this stuff, but Apple Pay pretty cool from a security perspective. Just it's different than nude celebrity photos. They've got that thing locked down pretty good, and Adrian especially has looked at the payment industry. And Adrian, you think this is going to be was my assessment right? Do you think this is going to be the first one to actually break out here in the US?
Yes. Because the banks like it, payment gateways like it, acquiring banks like it, merchants like it. So Apple's negotiated reduced fees because they've been offering improved security. That's a big deal. And most of the merchants, if they can get 60% of their transactions on smart cards or devices that act like smart cards, suddenly they don't have to comply with PCI DSS. So that'll be a big deal.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, and that's another thing about Apple Pay. If Apple Pay is set up, at no point does the real credit card ever touch the merchant. Period. It's all the fully encrypted,
Tokenization, you bet.
tokenized pieces, and that is very unlike card swipe tokenization, which we've been talking about for a while. Because with card swipe, it has at least one moment where the card reader gets
Right.
it, encrypts it, and goes to the processor to get the token back. This is all on the device, and I think that it's you go from your iPhone to the banks, and that's it, and that's pretty fascinating.
It's the way it should have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, there's that. So, all right. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we will be back next week, most likely, probably. So have a great week, everyone.